Okay, well, thank you very much for coming along today. I'm Neil Wakefield from the Energy Cell. I'm going to do an hour, and I promise it'll be an hour. For those who've seen me speak before, it will be an hour on a variety of different things related to doing business online in a very sort of common sense way. Because I think it's one of the most important things that we need to remember, because it's very easy for us who work in digital to get into lots of different techniques and details related to statistics and technologies, when ultimately the way that we do business, whatever we're selling, whether it be a restaurant, a hotel, a city, a county, and a whole nation, we're still kind of doing that in a similar sort of way, through the years. It's just the way that we communicate is slightly different. So I'm going to show you a very, very brief introduction about the Energy Cell for a start. Now, as a business, we help companies, organisations, individuals sell their products or market their services via a variety of different techniques. We specialise in online. We've been working in online for over 10 years. As a creative technology partner, which is how we're positioned, we've been fortunate to work with a variety of different sized businesses and brands over the years, from household names to individuals, and more recently Visit Lincoln we're very proud to have on the client list. And there's a new site coming soon which you may have seen around today a little if you've seen Emma's laptop and on some of the screens, that's going to deliver a vast amount of information about the different activities that are going on in the city, all the different businesses, the restaurants, the hotels, and really try to communicate everything that you could possibly want to do. But you'll see that online in the next few weeks. I'm not going to focus on that too much today. Our ethos is about collaborating with our clients. It's about making the most of every single communication, whether it be an email, a tweet, a whole new design, a whole new technology platform, reusing existing technology platform. We focus on getting the most out of it. I'm very lucky to work with a team of very talented people that are not just doers, they are thinkers, they are passionate about what they do, about the results that they deliver, strategists as well as technologists, and designers as well as art workers. And what we're going to look at today in a few minutes' time is a variety of different sites from around the world, and I want to talk you through different ways of analysing whether or not a site is performing, and why it's been designed like it has. Some of them are good, some of them are bad, some of them are a mixture, but all of them, I think we have to look at them and try and understand what they are trying to do. It's very easy to make assumptions about what a site is trying to do. So first of all, where are we right now? Well, over the last 15 to 20 years, we've turned into a nation, indeed a world of internet users who sit on their PCs, on their tablets, on their mobile phones, and we spend more time on TV on average in the UK. More time online than we do watching TV, which has changed over the last couple of years, as you probably know. And there's obviously a huge amount of information that you can dig into over and above that, in terms of age groups, demographics, different industry users for different purposes, even down to horrid things like how much time people spend using the internet while they're in bed, or indeed while they're on the loo. Apparently it's 10% of us at least admit to it. But that's only really an evolution of how we communicate, and not necessarily how we do business. It's how we acquire business is down to the way that we communicate. So, saying that, the internet as a medium has evolved particularly over the last 4 years, from informational and transactional purposes through to now much more emotional and experience-oriented objectives. So, how do we get there? And again, wherever we're trying to get, whatever we're trying to do, in business and indeed in life, with enough vision, ambition and energy, we can get there. But the trick is have we got the right approach to get where we need to be? And that's what I'm going to talk to you a little bit about in a second. Now, with all the technology in the world will not necessarily get us where we need to be. What it will get us is quite a large bill, usually, but if we don't use it correctly, we don't have the right roadmap to success, it will largely end in something not too far off failure. So, what is a great site? Well, a great site ultimately has to deliver great returns. Different people have different measures of success. So, being really clear about how you see success is the first thing they need to do. Whether it's increased profits, greater customer loyalty, awareness, understanding, the list is endless. So we have to start by defining what you want to achieve, and then work back from there to work out where we need to begin. There are a few key things to think about here. First is making sure that your commercial, creative, and technical goals are met in equal measure, and develop new and sometimes different to some companies, different working practices that sometimes have to change a culture. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Wherever we can, we need to make use of all the learning that you have as a business about your customers, about your previous experiences online, and adopt those best practices wherever possible. So, as a web owner or web property owner, most people are here. That's between UX, user experience, technology, and your business objectives. Now, to get this process right, to deal with user experience, to deal with technology, and deal with the demands of the company, we've learned that the success is reliant on these three things that are often in many companies, but not always in every. The first is innovation. The second is openness, and the third is responsiveness. If you can innovate, be open, and respond quickly, you're going to do better online than if you're not. And you take that principle through everything that you do, whether that be a banner advertisement on your homepage that might be scrolling across the top. It might be a content management platform. It might be a commerce platform. It might be a media campaign. It might be an attitude inside your organization. These things will help you change and evolve as the market evolves, and indeed as the needs of your business evolve. There's nothing worse, and it happens so much. We see it all the time, where companies are really on rails from a decision they made a few years ago. So if you're making a new decision soon about where you want to go online, then having these principles in mind will really, really stand you in good stead over the next couple of years. So if you can build a culture for those, that's fantastic. But it's important to blend that culture with the structured project management and commercial processes that you already have. It's not to say let's just totally change the way we do everything, because that's definitely not for everyone, and be very naive to think that any business can do that. But if you lean towards some of these cultural changes about being open, it will help, and it will help you challenge what you're doing from a technology perspective, a creative perspective, and in some extent, actually even a branding perspective as well. You might have heard the term agile if you've had conversations about online before, and it's a development process. Now, agile is a techie term, really, but it's been more adopted in traditional business these days as well. So, agile delivery processes value things like individuals and the way they interact, and that can be customers, it can be people within the company. They value that over tools and too many processes. They value software that really, really does work over extensive documentation, doing loads of specs, because again, specs takes time, it takes money. You're setting out a roadmap and a plan, and you've got to stick to it. You want to get to where you want to be as quickly as possible. Agile also prefers responding to change over setting that plan out and sticking to it to the letter. But Agile is not a silver bullet. Although it sounds quite fun sometimes, it sounds like chaos as well. You know, at the same time, for people who are used to lots of structure and ordered process. So, what good actually looks like is a blend of these cultural process and speed principles, so that you can test things, you can try things, test it, and react to it as quickly as the market needs to, or as you need to as a business. Data always beats opinions. It's really important as well. If you've got the data, then use it, mine it, understand it, because everyone's got an opinion, and most of the time, don't get me wrong, opinions are really good, and particularly when it's about a customer need or a customer, a general customer behaviour or customer attitude. But when it gets down to actually what is a customer really doing in the way that they're actually behaving, that's sometimes quite different to the conversation that you might have with a customer or a prospect. So that's when you need to get the data out, and indeed people that can interpret that for you. No one likes failing, but the principle of fail fast means that you can succeed quicker. It means that you're not spending, so for example, 6 months a year on a plan only to find it doesn't work. So if you have practices that allow you to understand anything that doesn't work more quickly, then you're going to ultimately save money and have a much better product. Keep a good, strong customer focus, and these innovations come from the learning that you have through test and data and what you're trying. Something that's also useful to be thinking about is prototyping, and prototyping can help dramatically in terms of trying to understand what your entry level solution might be. Because again, we could have a conversation about the best website in the world today, and there's 30 of us here, and we will come up with some fantastic ideas, but there are limits to time and there are limits to money to deliver these things. So if we can start by working out what is absolutely necessary, what it's going to take to deliver against those objectives, then we're going to have a much sort of happier commercial solution going forward. Being responsive also means that when you've got lots of different technology emerging, and again, the augmented reality type technology has been around for a few years, of course, like the solution you can see on the screen from Yelp, and particularly with destination-oriented content and websites. You need to be thinking about what's relevant to you and what's relevant to your industry and what's coming through, and being able to react quickly, having lots of flexible processes internally means that you don't have to think, well, so-and-so are doing this now, but I've got to wait a year, or that's going to be really expensive, so I've got to start again. If it sounds like you're going to have to start again, then you, in terms of when you're trying to lay out a software development plan or a creative plan, you need to have a bit of a rethink. So, who are your audience and how well do you know them? Now, to influence a behaviour or action, you have to get completely into the mindset of that person or that business or that family and what it is that they want. So, if you're a hotelier, if you're a restaurateur, if you're responsible for marketing a particular city, town, attraction, I think that it's pretty fair to say that you're the best people to answer these questions, because you talk to them all the time. You know what people like, and through managing that conversation, you build this vast amount of a wealth of information that is very difficult actually to translate onto paper sometimes. But some of the questions you've got to ask yourself is, put yourself in the shoes of the customer and allow them to ask, what does your service do for me? Is it right for me, my friends, my family? do I really understand how, how it works? And that can be something you can apply it to almost anything. Do I understand how arriving at your restaurant and being seated quickly and having my coat taken and having access to a fantastic wine list or fresh produce or local produce, do I understand how that actually works? Do I kind of believe it? And really importantly, do I trust this company or this individual? Or this, again, could be a whole area. And the way to go about doing this is, even if you do know them very well, to try and get it mapped out a little bit, is to obviously talk to them, build up personas of the different types of customers that you have. Write them down, and elaborate on the killer issues that they have at the time. And it's really important, obviously, to speak their language online too, and to some extent not your own. So we know with all of our clients that our customers tend to be the experts in their field. They know what they're talking about. They've built a successful business largely. When I say largely, I mean that sometimes people are coming to us with just new business ideas, and the business is not yet developed. But just remember that, because again, when you go into the online world, you think, well, I don't necessarily know how web development works, or what the best creative approach might be. But you do know your own industry and your own business, or your own city and your own town. So it's really important to remember that. And if you're the type of business that has a sales team, those guys and girls have done that over and over and over again, and get them involved in that process. Get the people who are front of house in the process. Not if you're a business owner, that's great, but get other people involved in contributing to who these people are. So once you start to do that, make sure you've got a really good, clear set of your own goals and your visitors' goals. But be careful not to overlook some of the basic principles of what people look for. So again, things like if you are a hotelier, for example, the fact that free parking is really, really important. If you haven't got free parking, you need to be really clear about how you do deal with parking. There's lots of little characteristics that are critical to the visitors that are not necessarily almost apparent to your differentiators. So planning the customer journey. Every customer goes somewhat along this path. Sometimes it's much quicker than others. They go through a discovery, exploratory, research, comparison, and a decision phase. So we need to. So the information that you gather, collate, write down about the needs of the customer and what they want can be mapped then across this in order to get from one end to the other, being a conversion, a sale, a booking, or indeed just better awareness, depending on what you're trying to achieve. So discovery is about, we call it the ooh factor. It's that time when you go onto a site and you go, oh yeah, this looks right for me. This looks good. This is interesting. This has got something that I'm looking for. And we need to try to think about leading their thoughts, being more inspirational, creating real desire about that product, that service, and making sure that all of your visual identity assets are presented. And if you don't necessarily have much of a visual identity, then it's important to create one, because depending on how your competitors work, and the great thing about the internet for a user is that they get the choice. They have lots and lots of choice, and they want to have, they love that choice. So the fact that they're on your site is just part of their overall journey. They're going to do discover on maybe half a dozen sites, or they start by doing that actually when they do their Google searches and they see the first 10 results come up on the page. They're already going through their discovery stage at that point. The next point is about allowing them to explore. You need to really need to show where you're really very, very, very strong. Visitors do want to make an easy decision. Visitors have got lots of stuff to do. People do like browsing the web, and I think it's reasonably fair to say that most people don't like spending loads and loads of money. People like buying things, but people also like getting deals. They like, it's the way of the world today. Lots of people, I think it's a bit of a generalisation, but they like acquiring stuff one way or another. And if that's making a decision to go and do something, then they naturally do want to do that. They just don't want to make a bad decision. So given the content they want, to say yes, and at this stage continue to lead the conversation. Then they start to try to rationalise these more emotional drivers in discovery and exploration. And this is where you need to start building that trust, providing evidence, showing customer interactions, review content. If you've got reviews on your own site, TripAdvisor sites, the list is endless, of course. Back up the story that you started to tell through discovery and exploratory stages with real evidence. People, again, are not really interested in reading 10 pages of content unless the detail is absolutely necessary for them to make a decision to say yes. So don't give them it if they, unless they really need it. And it does depend on what you're trying to sell. So, for example, if you're a restaurateur and you have got a fantastic local produce menu, for example, then you can back it up. You can give that level of evidence. You can't just say we only source local produce. It's nice to continue to sort of build on the belief system by providing evidence for that as well. But it's not necessarily something that you would lead on. Comparison. It's natural to think that that people are going to compare because they like to make choices. They are going to look at 2 or 3 different sites, 2 or 3 different businesses, 2 or 3 different hotels, 2 or 3 different cities to go to, or of course indeed even countries, in the same way that they do when they want to buy a washing machine, for example. But the fact is that people spend a vast amount of time researching their trips away, even when there's some interesting numbers which I haven't got on as part of this presentation, but white goods, for example, which tend to, like TVs, for example, people make a decision on a TV really very quickly, even though it might cost, say, if you're buying a plasma screen or an LED screen, it might cost £1,000. People make a decision on that really very quickly. Then they just go and try and get the best deal for it. But with going away, finding somewhere to stay, actually being more going away from their comfort zone, like many elements of tourism, as soon as they go outside that comfort zone, they kind of feel that they need to spend much more time researching it and becoming more comfortable with what is going to happen when they're away from their home. So you can be a bit more rational here and prove that you really care about your customers over your competitors. But the key thing here is to be aware of who you're competing against and react to it. And that's not to say necessarily, directly, we are the best. We are better than the next one. You have to demonstrate it, because anyone can say it. You've got to show it through your work, through your content, through the effort, through your photography, through the overall user experience. And then allow them to decide. We can't afford to leave them with any doubts. So we have to make sure that they can see easy ways to convert. That might be, again, making a booking, making an inquiry, picking up the telephone. Make it really easy. Reassure them with information, that around pricing, about guides. If you're in a particular area, tell them what else is going on. Demonstrate that you do know the local area. You are well connected. You can deliver additional deals and offers, and so on and so forth. Trust is key. So moving on from the customer journey, we know, and I'm not going to go into lots of detail about acquisition, but it's important to, in the context of the rest of the slides, it's important to be clear that the story always starts before they actually hit the website. So when we're looking at some sites in a minute, we have to bear in mind that that's not the first time they've heard of you, seen you, or been exposed to any element of your business or area. It might have been a Google search, it could have been word of mouth, it could have been a poster on a billboard, it could have been an ad in a movie theatre, it could be a whole different series of things that starts the conversation. And that's actually part of the we call it part of the discovery phase, actually, and how you interface the discovery phase onto the different marketing channels that you're actually using, online and offline. So once you know who your customer is and how to work with them, we need to consider how we're going to engage with them on your site and ultimately convert them with customer-centric content, customer-centric activity. As I said, I think earlier, that it's all about getting people to say yes. People like saying yes. Most people like saying yes over saying no. It's nice to say yes. And in order to be able to do that, content is and pretty much always has been king in being able in converting. Now, there's so many different kinds of content now that we can use, and in so many different places. And content over the last year, particularly, has been valued by more than just the web community. So, it's traditionally content can sometimes be left as an afterthought. So, okay, we want a website, we need an online booking, we need an e-commerce facility, we need a search for this, that, and the other, but the content is something that is not always engaging, and that's if you whatever you're trying to promote, it's often the case. Now, there's a guy called Seth Godin. If you haven't heard of him, it's worth picking up some of his books because he's a great writer and a huge influence to many. Seth Godin says that content marketing is the only sort of form of marketing left. It's all about content. It's all about content now. Now, because the content on your site is the vehicle at which you get to promote your business and portray your brand, it's the thing you should be spending the most time on, and it's the thing that you're often closest to as well. Now, if you want to work with a web designer or a web developer, you as a site owner is not necessarily expected to become a developer or a designer to learn Photoshop, to learn the ins and outs of PPC and SEO, although I'd say that it's an extremely good idea to be as informed and aware as possible. But because you're closest to your customers, often you're best positioned to at least lead the content development. So you can have this fantastic site with all this wonderful technology, but if there is the only thing between someone placing an order or not is the fact that you don't have fantastic content on your site, there's a big void sometimes to fill. So we need to think about it quite early on. And you can provide in this and related industries, providing diverse information related to trips, trip planning, visual materials, videos, photos, getting into a position where you can really influence these prospects is key. Because content is, with every campaign website, really is at the heart of every project. You develop your content, you distribute it through a variety of different channels or pages or sections or search tools or interactions, and then you expect to get results from it. So when you actually think about earlier on in the presentation, start by where you want to be, which is the result, and then work back from there. You will always arrive back at content, and content is related to functionality. You think, well, actually, okay, I need a shop, but it's what kind of shop do I need? How do I need the shop to work? How am I going to actually get people to navigate around it? If I don't start with my content, I can't create a good structure. If I don't think about my customer properly, I can't put them in a user experience or customer journey that they're going to like, enjoy, and react to. what's happening more and more, and people becoming more used to this now, that content marketing and the content elements of your website means that businesses are becoming publishers of content, because there's no copy and paste. It's like when you were at school, and these guys, there's a couple of young gentlemen here from school in Sleaford. You know, there's no copy and pasting in your, in your exams, and it's the same. It's the same online. You know, you can't. And for two reasons. One is because there's obviously copyright, but also is that you need to create unique content for two reasons. One is that that the search engines love unique content. The second is that the reason the search engines love it is because they represent the customer, and the customer loves unique content. You know, the customer doesn't want to go around the internet reading the same thing everywhere. So businesses now know that becoming publishers of content is key to succeeding online, and indeed, succeeding online is part of an intrinsic in succeeding in general. Okay. So what types of content can work well? Well, there's a vast amount, but there's a few examples here, of course. So editorial-based content needs to be really relevant, needs to be really, really valuable, needs to be really informative or educational or entertaining, depending on who you are and how your brand is positioned, or your service is positioned, or city is positioned. Marketing-backed content is incredibly important in that strategically a business or an organisation makes a decision to go down this particular direction, develops content from a sales perspective, and we've got to join up all the different touch points. So things that are happening on the face-to-face, things that you're doing maybe in a store, on the street, in a newspaper. We need to make sure that it's all joined up and relevant on your on the main sites too. And sometimes it can be elaborated as well. Often, when you're creating an ad, whether it be online or offline, you often start with a concept, an overall creative, which you have to distill so that in the discovery phase you can get the ooh factor. Yeah, it has to be something quick and easy to understand. But in actually getting to that simple message or that simple creative, you often have a wealth of information. So you can use that as source material to elaborate on your website, which is again good for provided it's relevant and informative, educational, or entertaining. It will help with conversion. It's also behavioural-driven content, which the aim of it is to change those behaviours, or indeed change a perception of a user. It sets out to do a very, very specific thing. So, for example, I want to. The brief might be, we need to make sure that people don't think that they're going to be cold when they go to Scotland, for example. So, and so that you create content based around that. Not that I think I've been to Scotland on, I think one of the hottest days ever when I went, and the first time I went to Scotland actually, I got incredibly badly sunburnt. But we have to. That's not an ad. That's just my experience. But that's a particular type of content which you can set out and create. Obviously, there's a vast amount of multimedia content. This is where it gets exciting, and the guys like these chaps who are recording this today will know all about it. But it's a whole an other tier in terms of video and audio production. It's one thing writing it down. It's one thing coming up with a great idea that's engaging. You've then got to take it to another level in terms of getting the lighting right, getting your sets right, getting your locations right, getting your participants right, engaged, organised, and all in place, so you can create some fantastic video content. But users love it, absolutely love it on sites. Again, it makes it easy for them. It makes it easy for them to imagine themselves there. They're not doing so much processing in terms of visualization and so on. So wherever you can, get some multimedia content working through it too. And then the final one, which I'll highlight here, is targeted content. Strictly, if it's not targeted, it's not really marketing strictly, because you have to be able to know what your who your audience is in order to be able to write content for them. So in the earlier phases, when you're breaking down who your customers are, looking at the different personas, looking at the way that different people behave, whether they might be more family oriented or business oriented, and so on and so forth, create content specifically for those audiences, because the right message will always lead to the right results. And the trick again is, going back to the earlier phases, is that if you're able to be responsive, open, and innovative, you'll be able to try new things from time to time. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through a few sites, look at them, and see which ones we feel are working and working better better than others. Some from the sites from all over the world. There's a couple for a start. Which first one is obviously Philadelphia and the countryside surrounding, which is obviously incredibly important to Philadelphia. I didn't even know there was the countryside around. I know America's a big place, but I don't know that there's something interesting to do around Philadelphia. So, but I do now, just from the first logo. And a consumer needs to make easy choices. A consumer likes to think that they have choice, but they're better at making choices when there are fewer decisions to take, if that makes sense. So straight away at the top here, we've got really simple, lovely navigation, stuff to do, planning my trip, and what's going on in Philly right now. On the actual website, you've got lovely rotating images, high quality shots, dramatic photography, really impactful stuff. It all feels really, really nice. So as a consumer or a potential visitor, then I've got some clear routes. But I can, as I look down on the site, I've got additional content. Now I think, but again I'll say think, because you can use your experience to judge the approach on these things. But I think that the approach to this has largely not been too much about sort of inspiring new visitors who are thinking about potentially going there. It's about through the content that they've delivered. It's about people that are already going and finding out what's on. As on all of the sites, the way these many of the destination sites, it's not true of all, the way that they monetize their activities, often through online bookings, of course. If I scroll down the page a little bit more, we've got, I think, what is a pretty kind of low effort approach to delivering content on the page. What is fantastic though, of course, is that customers they're afraid of making bad decisions. So favourite attractions is something that that's great. Just presenting things in date order isn't necessarily going to bring new people in. It just, if I happen to be there on the on the 10th, that's great. But fortunately, Plan My Trip in Philly now is going to lead me through. This is a completely different approach, inspired by Iceland. The previous site is very, I'd call it pretty traditional kind of layout, traditional kind of content that you'd expect. There's very sort of little in terms of leading the conversation. There's not so much passion about it. The content's kind of quite clinical. If we take inspired by Iceland as a site, their approach is very, very different. Now, this is not the official Iceland site. This is about the reason I showed this site. It's about knowing their particular customer and who they're targeting. So they're targeting maybe more creative people, people with more of a musical interest, for this as a destination. Okay, so as opposed to people who are going there, might be going there anyway, on business or visiting family and so on, which of course is really important. But when we think about content, as we scroll down these pages, the approach is it's so different. It's rare, and it's rarely seen, and it's quite refreshing. But if you've got this blend of things that are going on. You've got the odd tweet coming through. You've got Facebook integration, which builds, shows that there's extra advocacy there. The content's much more targeted, again for this particular audience. Much more emotive language throughout, and so on and so forth. But it's a very unconventional site design and unconventional site layout. Personally, I like it, but that doesn't mean it's actually any it's being successful. Your personal choice is more personal opinion about the way something looks is more about everyone being being an art critic, if you like, judging it by design. You need to know what the objectives are. You need to know what you need to be clear about what the results are. But nevertheless, the reason I brought it up is that when you need to be more passionate, when you need to be much more emotive, then this is a much better way of doing it. Idaho. Don't know if anyone's ever been to Idaho. I know I haven't been to Idaho. I think this site is actually branded really well. I'm not quite sure that you can pick up on the full depth of this site because of the lighting. But Google it and you'll find it and have a look. They've really gone to town on the branding. It's really rustic in its feel. You've got this really lovely wooden feel to it. And that's extended throughout the whole site, all the way down into the footer area. But there's quite a lot going on here. I've actually, as a visitor, I've got loads and loads of choices, lots and lots of things to do. But it's almost too much. I've got lots of content to consume. I've got content to consume before I can make my decisions on the page. So it can be kind of overwhelming. But we have got some nice simple navigation, and at the top, and if you've seen those at the top, it's something that's really nice. Is that we call this a utility bar across the top, in that you've got golf, you've got snow, you've got motorbiking, motorcycling. So you can click on those, and you actually get an alternate personalised experience. Again, because if you know your audience and they would have gone through the process, segmented their base, and that we've got people coming to play golf, we've got people going skiing, snowboarding, we've got people doing all these wonderful things. I want to make sure that I can communicate with my audience in the most relevant way. So when we design our customer journey, we're going to design it so that we can fulfil those needs and stand the best chance of conversion. But there's a few other things as well that just, I think, again, creatively I actually really quite like it, but from a tactics perspective, it does fail in a number of ways. It makes a lot of assumptions that you know a lot about it. And again, maybe people who know about Idaho are the only people that ever go for very specific reasons, but it's not clear about what the offer is. One of the things that we often look for as consumers is offers. We want to see what deal we're going to get. What's in it for me? I'm going to come and spend money here, but what are you going to give me other than just a room for the night or a great meal? I want something else. And that happens in B2C, in B2B all of the time, but it happens in B2C in consumer markets too. So we're going to have a look at Copenhagen. Now, Copenhagen. I hadn't seen this site actually up until maybe a week or so ago, but I thought I'd show it as an example of one that they've put. You know that they've put a huge amount of effort into. They thought, right, let's make sure we can have content and structure to accommodate everybody, and let's come up with lots and lots of content. But the big mistake that they've made, I think, in my opinion, is they've not organised it at all. So we hit this homepage for Copenhagen. I've got stuff that's going on right now. I've got no emotive. I've got no why go to Copenhagen. I've got nothing about what to expect other than what happens to be on those days. So very technology driven. If I'm in Copenhagen, if I live in Copenhagen, it might be better. As with most of the sites, you'll see that they'll bring up, you've got the hotel booking, which is an incredibly important part of these types of sites. But the rest of the navigation is really tricky. There's the principle of having a utility bar, which is across the top here, visit, living, cruise, meetings, investing, and so on, is that there is a real sort of clear hierarchy of user-centric content, which is running on this bar here, and content which is often important to some, or it's desirable by some, but it's not key in the users saying yes. And I think they've confused it. But if we go down the page, this is actually just their homepage. So we've got guides, which again, great content, loads of stuff, loads of effort gone into it. Top attractions, transport, inexpensive restaurants, lots of guides. And I'm sure that, and I've had a look at some of the content. It's really, really good content, but it's not delivered to me in a way that I can. It's, video content as well. There's great video content on there. It's not delivered to me in a way that I can take it more, and it goes on and on and on and on. There's some good stuff in there. So that's a good example of a site where the Copenhagen have got a fallback, and again they could be quite, and they're likely right, because a lot of emphasis goes on a homepage. We've been looking at homepages so we can try and gauge mood and gauge the way that these destinations are positioning themselves. But in reality, only about 25% of the customers actually go through that homepage, because when they're searching for something very often more specific than content that's just on your homepage. So they're going straight through to your places to stay page, or your or your menus page, or your ingredients pages. That's often the case. So when you actually start delving down, Copenhagen's pages, maybe not, homepage is not as an important factor. We'll look at a few hotels for example as well. This is a lovely hotel, a luxury hotel in London called Sanderson. Now I'm not online here, so I can't show you it fully, but have a look at it. It's just Google Sanderson London, you'll see it. Some great stuff. Now they've gone to a huge amount of effort to create, obviously, their market is luxury. Now luxury is often easier to make look really, really fantastic by the nature of it. But nevertheless, great photography is key in selling anything. And this is one of those sites that's absolutely photography-led. But at the same time, while it's very visual-led, and you could say often sites that are very visual-led can, you can look at them and think, well, okay, well, they may sometimes lack a little bit of substance. They are engaging, and they are they do create that ooh factor. Now, a lot of people are going to come to this site and think, ooh, that looks expensive as well, which I think it is quite expensive. But regardless, the businesses are quite happy. When you run an online business, you're quite happy to make sure that the leads you get are going to be qualified leads. So if you've got people making lots and lots of inquiries and all day, every day, and calling, ringing up, only to find out that that it's maybe out of the price range, or they haven't got the food, they haven't got the menu that you that you want, or the experience, regardless of whether it's luxury or not, the experience is not what they expected, then you're going to have a lot of time wasted. It's obviously going to end up hitting the bottom line. But this site does a lot of the things that you actually that you need to do. People come on the site, they get the U factor. The things that people want to hear is how do I reserve? Oh, there's special offers as well, which is often quite attractive, particularly in premium goods, and explore the hotel. So my discovery needs are satisfied. My explore ones are actually are done in a very direct way, and my commercial, rational ones are too, with regards to special offers. But we looked earlier about we talked earlier about the 25% and making sure 25% of people going through the homepage and making sure that you maintain your efforts in terms of content and quality as you go through. Sanderson do that throughout, and they do an incredibly good job. whether you're looking at the rooms, or this is an example of the booking page. They tell you when you're looking at availability whether or not so what's actually going on in the city at the same time. For a hotel site to do that on a specific day, again, it's not as common as you might think on site. The reason is it's quite tricky to do yourself unless you've got tie-ups with other partners and you're collaborating with with different people, particularly as a hotelier. Now, whilst this all looks fantastic, or if you go online and see it, you'll see it's beautifully presented. It's all animated. One of the reasons I wanted to show this is because it's all done in Flash. Now, Flash, as some of you will know, is largely a big no-no at the moment. Now, it's because it doesn't work properly on mobile phones, doesn't work properly on your iPads. It does work on other mobile devices, but most of that market is taken up with those devices these days. So when you go and look on your mobile phone, it's not going to work. But the thing is, it does, because they've got a very specific mobile-centric site which gets rid of all the flash and gets into all of the detail, gets into what someone wants when they're on their mobile device. They want it now. They're not exploring in quite the same way. There's a huge trend, which is building over here, but particularly in the US, with book on the day on mobile devices. It's happening more and more and more. And Sanderson are taking a great advantage of that. And they've got very unique content. You can obviously make your reservations on the phones, and so on and so forth too. If we look at a few others, I'm just going to rattle through some of these. So we've got a very, very different hotel, a very different experience. This is a completely different type of experience, but some of the things they're doing very well. Really, really lovely, simple navigation, great photography, real people, and offers. These change around. There's something for everyone. As you scroll down the page, there's extra valuable content as well. Lovely little site called Hotel Daniel, which has got, again, a slightly different approach. So when you're trying to set yourself apart from your competition, making the effort to be different, making the effort in terms of creative presentation, good quality content, really works. Remember, people have choices. They want to make the best choices. Well, a series of others, but you can see this is a really quite simple but nice site. Lovely, clear navigation. It's a golf resort in, I think this one's in Spain. No, yeah, it's in Spain. Yeah. But again, fantastic photography. You can't afford to do anything else. Obviously, quite premium as well. Lovely little interactive menu for the rotating navigation. Again, simple choices. 1, 2, 3, 4. Nice, simple choices. Out in Dubai, similar sort of thing. Again, I've got up-to-date content that's coming through. It gives me a feel that when I go, there's always going to be something going on. There's something that I'm going to get a good deal. It's luxury, but with a discount, which is what I want to. As a consumer, we all want to hear, and then nice links into some of the more valuable content too. There's a similar site out in this one's out in Dubai, I think. Again, these are luxury apartments, beautiful photography, but the presentation of the rest of it is rubbish. It really is. To be honest, it's probably one of those places where if you can afford to go, you'll probably get your butler to book it online for you, but nevertheless, it's really kind of lazy in the detail. It's the little details that people remember, like the dodgy icons, the poor typography. But nevertheless, their structure is actually reasonably well thought through. You've got the different languages, you've got the different country and culture approaches. You've got all of the right things, but just not necessarily set out in the right order. There's another example of something which is maybe could be better. So to summarise, we've got to get these processes right, and to get these sites right, you've got to know your customer and know them we all think we know our customers until we actually really sit down and get a few people together and you know, elaborate on that view that we have of our customers. So put the work in there, understand their needs, give them what they want. All they want to do is say yes. You just give them a reason. Just give them as many reasons to say yes as you can without overloading them. Create fantastic visuals and fantastic content, which will help make sure that they convert. And when I say fantastic visual content, I mean fantastic user experience. I mean in a simple, easy-to-use navigation, great typography, nice layouts, easy-to-use image tools, and so on and so forth. Once you've got them, look after the data, own the data. It's, you know, and really work with it. It's a fantastic tool, at least someone in your organisation or close to your organisation, to really work it. Because if you have got with the right approach, you can test new things, react to what you learn about the different tactics you employ, and get better results on and on and on and on and on and on. I think that if you can do all of those things, you'll stand a much better chance of making the right decisions. So that's me. Thank you.